Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We are here to give you some tidbits, some trends, and some final thoughts on Groceryshop 2025, the industry event that took place in Las Vegas last week. My name is Peter Breen. I'm with the Publicis Commerce marketing team, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. So welcome. Here is the agenda we're going to be going over on the next slide. We're going to start with a very brief overview of Groceryshop itself. Then we're going to take a quick look at some of the key themes that were prevalent throughout the event. And that's going to count as the tidbits portion of the session. We're then going to turn things over to our very, very distinguished panel to find out what they were doing personally at the show, first off. And then we're going to ask them a list of 8 prepared questions that hopefully will cover most, if not all, of the bases in terms of the key trends from the event. And then time willing, and I think there should be some time, we'll open it up to questions from you folks out there in the audience. So first things first, let me introduce the panel. We have Elena MacGurn, who is SVP and Head of Organic Search at Digitas. Elena has over 18 years of experience capturing consumer engagement across owned social and retail platforms for a variety of Fortune 500 brands, and she's got a proven track record of success in digital marketing. We also have Michele Roney, who is EVP of the Retailer CX practice at Mars United Commerce, where she helps retailers drive growth through marketing, customer experience design, and creating, operationalizing, and monetizing retail media networks. She's a 35-year veteran of Mars United. And finally, we have Jason Goldberg, who is Chief Commerce Strategy Officer at Publicis Groupe. Likely needs no introduction for many of you, but just in case, he's a 4th-generation omni-channel retailer who has collaborated with over 100 clients on the Internet Top 500 since launching his very first e-commerce site back in 1995 for Blockbuster Entertainment. Most people didn't know what the Internet was in 1995, so congratulations, Jason. He's one of the foremost leaders in our industry. Now, why do we have these characters? If you could go back there, Kyler. The caricatures here, if you've been to Groceryshop or its sister event, Shop Talk, you can guess why we have these caricatures. All 3 of our panelists were on the stage last week as speakers at the event. So they didn't just experience it, they actually contributed some of the learning that we're going to be talking about. So if we could just take a minute to look at some of the top line details. Like I said, Groceryshop last week over the course of 4 days in Las Vegas. Probably could have been over the course of 3 days without losing too much of the experience, but I'll save that thought for the event survey. The event launched in 2018 as a channel-specific spin-off from Shop Talk, which started 3 years earlier and almost immediately became a must-attend event for the retail marketplace. 4,000 attendees, including 1,000 retailers and brands, both those numbers down compared with previous years. By all estimations, the show floor was also significantly smaller, with about 360 exhibitors and sponsors. 170 speakers, including our 3 panelists. And then finally, as you see here in the picture, 1 flock of Canada geese who took up residence in the Mandalay Bay wave pool over the weekend. That's the photo from my hotel room Sunday morning. If you've had any experience with Canada geese, you know those are the last creatures you really want hanging out in your pool. And we'll leave it at that. Just wanted to mention quickly the 2 winners in the annual Groceryshop Startup Pitch Competition, because they're both related to topics that we're going to be discussing. Muse Inc., which specializes in in-store retail robotics, including at-shelf inventory scanning, and then Scrollmark, which provides agentic AI solutions for social engagement. And then on the next slide, we'll just look at some of the key themes. Wanted to cover them quickly. Like I said, we'll be covering at least some, if not all of them, during the discussion. We'll also be covering them in more depth next week when we publish our official Groceryshop recap report. That's going to include perspectives from 12 thought leaders from across Publicis Commerce, the 3 folks we have with us here today, and 9 more. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, number 1, commerce is moving too fast to forecast. I think there might have been one exception. But no one was asking panelists and speakers what the industry is going to look like in 5 or 10 years anymore. The best you got was 2 or 3 years, and even that made some experts hesitate. It's not that they're afraid to make predictions now, it's that the pace of change, the advances in technology that we're experiencing are moving so quickly that it's almost silly to assume that any current trend is going to still be prevalent beyond more than a couple of years. And a perfect example of that is number 2. 5 or 10 years ago, no one was predicting the massive impact that agentic AI might be having on the commerce marketplace. And in fact, the conversation kind of changed a little bit over the course of Groceryshop's 4 days. In the beginning, it was, transformative change that will be brought about by generative AI. But then after OpenAI unveiled their new instant checkout in ChatGPT on Monday, the discussion became a little bit more urgent. Number 3, retail media is full funnel. Not a new concept for anybody that's working in this space, but a lot of discussion about retail media as a full funnel opportunity, not just in the scope of the media that it offers, but in the business objectives that it's designed to achieve. Liz Roche from Albertsons Media Collective said that it's generating intent at the top of the funnel, not just harvesting intent at the bottom. And of course, driving measurable business results, not just media metrics. It's still the store, stupid. That's a comment from Ben Miller, one of Groceryshop's content people. Full funnel requires retail media to provide relevant and measurable opportunities within the physical store. Ben was talking about brick and mortar as the foundation for all retailer activity, including retail media. And of course, still the source of 80 to 90% of product sales, depending on the category. ROAS is the stupidest thing ever. I should have put that in quotations to keep us out of trouble. It was a comment made by Benoit Vatiri, who is Chief Media Officer at Liquid Death. A very blunt, very quotable comment about ROAS as a poor metric for retail media measurement, but it wasn't the only one made at the show. And we've been hearing this for a few years now too. The marketplace does seem to be in almost complete agreement now that this is not the best way to go as we move toward more business building metrics. And by the way, for Liquid Death, those business building metrics are household penetration and new to brand. And then finally, GLP-1 is a wonder drug, not because of the way it's helping consumers who have type 2 diabetes or who want to lose weight, but for the impact it's having on the grocery marketplace overall. 1 in 8 US consumers have taken a GLP-1 medication. Households with at least 1 user reduce their grocery spending by 6% within 6 months. So helping GLP-1 users adjust their lifestyles has become fertile ground for shopper engagement. It is a little pill with a big story to tell. And I'm sorry, that commercial just haunts me. Okay, so that's enough for the setup. Let's bring in the panel. And as I said up top, first thing we're going to have them do is to give us some of the highlights from their own sessions. And we will start with Elena, whose session was titled New SEO Strategies for a Generative AI World. Elena, please take it away.
Thanks, Peter. That was a great introduction. It sets us up nicely. Mine is about how AI is buying your groceries. Had a great time at Groceryshop. My presentation was actually a brand new format that they're testing out, introducing this year. It's called the Test Kitchen. Meant to be more of a hands-on, longer, more immersive experience. You get to talk trends, but then you also get to sit down and talk shop. So that was very interesting. It was all about AI search, how the generative AI experience is rewriting the rules of product discovery, product shoppability. The main idea is pretty straightforward. Today, we see products either win or lose before consumers even reach the store or website, or sometimes even a retailer site. So we have ChatGPT, Perplexity, and even Google AI overviews now very rapidly becoming a part of our daily shopping habits. So we talked a lot about what it all means for digital commerce. And then the second half of the session, I got to sit down with Pras Kumar. He's Diageo's head of digital commerce experience. So we did a deeper dive into how AI is reshaping how their many, many brands show up, how they stay shoppable online. Good audience participation. I'd say obviously most questions were about how we win visibility in this AI assistant experience, how we remain competitive, make sure we're discoverable, and now, given the recent news in the industry, how do we stay even more shoppable in the AI-driven marketplace? So I'll just give you 3 highlights from the session. The first key theme was mostly about the path to purchase and how it has shifted so much recently, right? We used to think about organic search and retail media as two separate lanes. One for awareness, one was for conversion. Now AI has really merged them into one single fluid journey. When I speak to an AI assistant, I use ChatGPT most of the time, say, what's the best shampoo for color treated hair? That's no longer a search query for me. That's a shopping moment, right? And AI models pull from everywhere. They check for product details on the site. They compare prices from your competitor sites, check sentiment on social, filter reviews, just to decide which brands to recommend. Right? And if a brand is not showing up there in that answer, it's not just missing traffic, it's missing the decision. That product is essentially then invisible to the consumer. The second takeaway is if this new shelf that we are talking about is inside the AI answer, we've got to adopt a full funnel organic commerce strategy. I mean, all the way from product discovery to purchase. And that's where we see the next wave of optimization really taking place. This is my team's job now. It's making sure that our clients' brands are readable, recommendable, relevant, competitive inside those new AI environments. And we work across all the relevant channels that feed that consistent brand context. So a lot of the discussions that we had during the session were very much cross-channel. Top funnel considerations that participants mentioned, a lot of brand storytelling, social proof. That's to make sure that AI recognizes brand authority, sees consistency. In the middle, a lot of conversations about feeding AI. Again, credible comparisons, expert product reviews, and then obviously validated data as much as we can provide that. And then at the bottom, all about structured product data, feeding product information directly into large language models, just making sure that the product details are clean, consistent, very easy, digestible for AI to understand. So much of the discussions focused on how we connect all that, the awareness piece, the credibility piece, the purchase data piece, to not just show up, but also win both that recommendation and the sale. Diageo in particular, they love to do a test and learn approach. That those were their examples. They do a proof of concept first, show results, and then scale a connected approach cross capability once that success is proven. But across the board, I would say that everyone echoed AI visibility is now everyone's business. And then for the final takeaway there, measurement, zero click is the new normal. This is that part that gets a lot of head nods in the room typically. If more consumers get their answers directly within AI conversations without ever clicking out, we obviously have to be rethinking what success looks like. Clicks are no longer the metric, it's visibility, it's authority. And brands, obviously, our clients, they need to measure how often they're seen, how often they're cited, chosen inside these AI-driven experiences, not just how many visits we get to a website. So it's a huge mindset shift for marketing, also a huge mindset shift for measurement teams across the industry. And adapting the measurement strategies we have today for that zero click world does demand a full funnel strategy so that we remain competitive. So anyway, it was productive, very exciting discussion. The rules in this space are being rewritten as we speak. Brand storytelling is becoming a lot more integrated, and many participating commerce search teams that came to that session were hungry to lean in, shape what comes next, continue the conversation as we're figuring it out.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elena. Next, we're going to bring in Michele Roney, who spoke with executives from 3 retailers about designing best-in-class retail media networks.
And clearly I'm serious about it because of the picture. So I've been working with retailers for over 35 years, helping them move from the old co-op model to now retail media. We operate 4 or 5 networks today. And I think that the biggest, we were part of the retailer track. So they wanted us to talk directly to retailers. So the retailers in the audience, this is for you. Brands, you might want to close your ears a little bit because there might be some stuff you don't want to know. But the bottom line here is there's over 200 plus media networks in the US today. And obviously, there is a very small share of funding that's available for those networks. So it's not just designing best-in-class networks, but it's also looking at opportunities to grow networks that exist today. And also, with my panelists, the intent was to think about where are we going next. And again, Peter's point of, can we look at 5 years in advance? None of my retailers that were on the panel would agree to go past 2 years. So it's just moving too fast. So I think the bottom line of the story is how do we differentiate as a retail media network, and what are kind of the must-haves that you should think about. And if you go to the next slide, I'll give you those real quick. So there were 7 key mandatories that we look at based on our understanding of what we're seeing in the marketplace as a buy and a sell side within Mars. Starting with data. The only thing at the end of the day that you're going to have left is data as a retailer, because the data is what is going to drive your uniqueness and your value proposition. I think that I was quoted saying, if your audience is a 55-year-old woman, it's not unique. And I will continue to say that. What you need to be thinking about is, do you have an audience that no one else can reach without you involved as a retailer? So it's got to have breadth, it's got to have depth, and it's got to have scale. We talked about organizational readiness. As a retailer, a lot of, to be honest, a lot of retailers get in their own way. There are a lot of silos. There's a lot of, not everybody's always ready to move in the same pace. And the retailer needs to make investment in resources and be ready to deploy those resources when they're needed. So organizational readiness is important. We talked about having a robust offering. Obviously, this plays into everything that we've been talking about, full funnel, and all the messaging around media. So yes, we have to have a robust offering. And one of the things that we looked at as part of the first 10 minutes of the presentation was, when you pull up the Mars report card, yes, I got a plug in there, but when you pull up the Mars report card, what you start to see these days is every dot filled, which means that's leaving very, very little differentiation in offerings. So robust offering is just baseline. There's got to be other ways that you differentiate your offering. Activation tools. How do we make it easy for advertisers to buy and integrate third parties, including clean rooms, of course. And we're going to talk about strong measurement capabilities, which is also very important. And I 100% agree with Liquid Death. And the message that I believe is the strongest is, I know, and this is something, a conflict that we heard during the sessions, but I know that we want to try and come up with some standardization in measurement for retail media. But the viewpoint is, every channel of retail media is different. And retailers have an obligation to help the brands by understanding what success looks like in their channel. We talked about things like in a C-store channel, the average ring is $8, 2 items. So when you're thinking about 2 items, it's velocity, it's not basket size. So I really think it's on the retail media networks to help the brands understand what success looks like and have their own viewpoint of what they're seeing, because they see all of the data. Most of the brands only see their data. Achievable expectations. If you're a retailer, you know how this looks. But very often, leadership has decided that it's about hitting a number, and that number is usually extremely aggressive. And we don't ever want retail media to become a way to just collect dollars, because that's not going to sustain the business moving forward. If there's not a successful partnership, then and success, it's just not going to scale. The brands are just not going to come back. And then ongoing demand generation. One thing to really think about is all retail media networks are now B2B companies, and B2B companies need to market as B2B companies. So are you in conferences? Are you speaking? Are you letting the brand community know what your case studies are, what your focus is, what your vision is? again, just keeping that ongoing demand generation going. And then I think the panel was really great in talking about a few things of, how they got to where they are in their journey. One of the biggest questions that we talked about was, if you're going to drive meaningful growth, is it investing in people or technology? And the panel was pretty comprehensive that it's people. You have to have the right talent. You have to have the right strategy before you determine what the right technology is. We talked a little bit about in-store and a seamless, personalized, and value-driven customer experience involving in-store. And to be honest, they were all in a place where it's still unknown and they're still trying to find their way. And I think when we talked about what's the future, what I thought was interesting is I didn't hear about the newest innovation in media products. I heard about the changing of the way that retail media reports and is a part of a retail organization. So I believe it was Ahold that, now has brought marketing and retail marketing together. They're operating under the same leadership and the same umbrella, with the intent of ensuring that everything they do is leading to success for both the retailer and the brand, as opposed to in some operations, they're completely siloed. So that was my session. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'm going to pass it off to Jason or Peter. Peter.
Thanks.
Yeah, just Jason, you're not you're last, but you're definitely not least, because you pulled double duty there at the show and hosted two sessions, one on unified and seamless shopping experiences, the other on blending engagement and commerce. And now I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I like to say twice the sessions, half the value. So that's what I lack in quality, I made up for in quantity. Michele, I know you said 55-year-old women is not a unique audience. I talk to a lot of brands that think they have a 25-year-old female shopper, and it's actually a 55-year-old female shopper. Is that unique? Also not unique? All right. So yeah, Peter, I got two sessions. I did one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. My Tuesday session was entitled Crafting Unified and Seamless Shopping Experiences. So I'll call that broadly what we used to call the omni-channel session. And I had two perfect panelists for that. I had a retailer and a brand. So the retailer was Rena Hurst, who's the VP of Digital Merchandising at Sam's Club. And then the brand was Michael Rita, who is with Marzetti Foods. It's a multidisciplinary food brand. They do a lot of the America's favorite sauces, both that you buy from the grocery store and co-branded restaurant sauces. So it was interesting to me, first of all, to hear from Michael what his POV was about seamless shopping experiences, given that he really doesn't have a direct channel. So he doesn't own the actual point of transaction in any of these shopping experiences. He can merely influence that with his retail and restaurant partners. But he still talked about how much of a focus his company puts on these seamless omni-channel experiences. And so for him, that's a lot of tying the owned content that Marzetti has through its social and through its own branded websites, with the retail media that they invest in with their partners, and the in-store merchandising that they provide to their partners, the vendor-provided displays, the end caps, and all the packaging and promotions that go along with that, right? And so they're looking at all of those touch points through an omni-channel lens, trying to get things more seamless. And then we pivoted to Rena, who owns the digital experience at Sam's Club. And Sam's, for those who haven't been following it, has been making a lot of progress in sort of breaking down the silos and connecting all the customer experiences. So one of the big successes they had is they've added AI computer vision checkout, so that you can no longer have to do a receipt verification. You don't have to stand in line and see a security guard on your way out of a Sam's Club store. You just wheel the cart right out of the store. The robot takes a picture of your cart, matches up all your items with your receipt, and you don't even know it happened. Also, a very high percentage of Sam's Club shoppers now use Scan and Go. So they're using their mobile phone while they're on their shopping journey. It's over 50% of Sam's Club shoppers. It has some unimaginably high NPS score. I want to say she said something in the 90s, which you almost never see. So, they're using these digital tools while they're physically in the store. They also have done a lot to sort of break down silos and merge all the various services. So Sam's Club has a prescription eyewear business. They have a prescription pharmaceutical business. They have a lot of ready-to-eat foods. They have a pizzeria. They have rotisserie chickens. They have fresh rolled sushi. And you now can go to Sam's, say, hey, I want a prescription med, including one that has to stay refrigerated, like, say, a GLP-1, a hot rotisserie chicken, and a kayak, and have all of them delivered to your home in 30 minutes with appropriate hot and cold chain. So that's kind of an example of, in the old days, those would have all been disparate services that would have been on different delivery service levels and different transactions. Now they're one seamless transaction. And then to me, the most interesting kind of conversation between the two of them and the collaboration that brands and retailers are doing. So Michael sells sauces in Sam's. He was able to use new retail media advertising types in Sam's retail media network, which is called NAP, that are tied to Scan and Go. And so for the first time, Michael can talk to a customer and know exactly where she is on the shopping journey. Maybe she's put proteins in her cart that are compatible with Michael's sauces. And so Michael can buy that insertion to talk to that customer before she leaves the store, before she cashes out, but after she's put that protein in her cart. Hearkening back to all the good advice we got from Michele about best practices, that to me sounds like a perfect example of using omnichannel to generate a truly unique audience, in this case, an audience with protein in their cart that happens to be a 55-year-old woman. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we did a session talking about blending engagement and commerce across this ever-increasing number of new touch points that we all have to manage. And so this kind of veered into Elana's space a little bit. We certainly talked about answer engines, and that increasingly people are using answer engines in their shopping journey. And now this panel was on Wednesday. On Monday of that week, ChatGPT announced instant checkout. So perfectly on time. They blended commerce and shopping 2 days before our session, so that was very helpful of them. We talk about Perplexity, which has been doing it for about a year now with Buy with Pro. We also talked a lot about TikTok Shop, and so I should say the three panelists for this session were very appropriately Amanda Parker, who runs food for TikTok Shop, Toby Espinoza, who runs all of the ads and growth services for DoorDash. She's also one of the first 100 employees at DoorDash. So pretty cool picture of their meteoric growth. And then Ekta Chopra, who's the chief digital officer at Elf, who has famously been a first mover in a lot of these things. So from Amanda, we got to hear about the evolution of TikTok as an entertainment platform and an engagement platform to a commerce platform, and blending commerce in. And we talked a lot about the brands, the direct-to-consumer brands that have had real success on TikTok Shop. If you don't know, TikTok Shop is the fastest growing retailer in the history of mankind. They're doing quite well. But we also talked about the role of TikTok Shop for brands that maybe historically were not direct-to-consumer, or for wholesalers that are selling other people's stuff. So we talked about how these engagement touch points are turning into commerce touch points. Toby from DoorDash had a really interesting set of perspectives on this. First of all, if you haven't been following DoorDash, they were obviously born as a ready-to-eat meal delivery service, so delivering hot food from restaurants. That's still a big business for them. But increasingly, they are also getting in the grocery delivery business. So they announced, I think, right before or at Groceryshop, that they're now delivering from Kroger, I believe they deliver from Aldi as well. So a lot of the big grocers, and they have a service called Double Dash. So essentially what that lets you do is perhaps you're traveling and you're ordering a ready-to-eat meal to eat at your hotel instead of room service, which, side note, the room service industry has been wiped out by all these food delivery services. But you also want some snacks in your hotel room. You can do a Double Dash and get groceries from Kroger or 7-Eleven delivered with your ready-to-eat meal. And so kind of turning this meal occasion into a grocery occasion for Double Dash customers. They're also talking about how you can use that DoorDash to commerceify what traditionally would have been higher in the funnel marketing vehicles. So adding a commerce call to action to a media unit that you might have on Meta or on Google or in TikTok Shop. And so, increasingly the ability to activate at any of these touch points with commerce is super interesting. And then, of course, Ekta was kind of the perfect panelist to bring it all home. She talked about her ELF's journey on digital influencers and how important platforms like Instagram and TikTok were, and how they've evolved to direct purchasing platforms with TikTok Shop. Also, they have a very young audience. They legitimately are quite a bit younger than 55-year-old women. And a significant portion of their audience they find on video game platforms. And so they now have commerce experiences in Roblox, for example. And so that was super interesting, talking about how they're all thinking about these, how they're having to organize their teams around these new experiences, and how they're having to create new success criteria to measure all of these new experiences. So those were my 2 sessions, and I learned a lot from both of them, Peter.
Yeah, and I think, it was just within those 4 sessions, we covered a lot of the key themes and the major takeaways across the entire show. But for our Q&A portion, wanted to go beyond the times you were on the stage to find out what you were experiencing when you weren't on the stage. And so we've got 8 questions here. Folks, we'll go round robin if that's okay on these. And we'll start with Elena on the first one. Wanted to find out what you think the most significant trend was discussed on the stage and why.
Well, on stage, every single conversation that like all of us have been in had the word AI in it, agentic commerce, AI this and that. I love rapid fire sessions. The very first one, day 1, that I went to had 7 trends. All 6 of them, the first ones were AI related. AI for product development, testing, supply chain, content creation, you name it. And number 7 was personalization. So it's really just AI, agentic commerce, and it's clear we've moved past the experimentation phase. We're now discussing it a lot more casually, more like a connective tissue for commerce, in from every possible angle. I think it was Ryan Drowdy at Giant Food said, if you take a shot every time you hear AI in the conference, you'd be drunk by 10 a.m. I don't know, Michele, what did you hear?
Yeah, I heard similar, and I did hear about the drinking game as well. I think what I was hearing is all related to what we're saying about agentic and, the way that the customer journey is built, and is it awareness, is it conversion? What I kept hearing is that everyone, both retailer and brands that were speaking, were talking about putting the customer at the center, which of course is the most important thing. But the thought isn't that they have a strategy, which is okay. The thought is focus on the customer and they will tell us where to go next. And I think that's a good strategy to keep, because to be honest, this is changing so fast. And with agentic AI, which again, they didn't want to say because they didn't want to contribute to the drinking game, that it's going to change dramatically. So I think that was the most significant thing I heard. Jason?
And I apologize if I sound inebriated, because I thought we still were playing the drinking game. I didn't realize we stopped. Yeah, this is somewhat why you don't want to go last on a panel, by the way, is I'll certainly echo the first 2 and say, like, one of the important topics was agentic. I got to say, I struggle with it a little bit, because I feel like there's this really interesting tension in all the conversations that I had with folks about agentic, I feel like we're simultaneously underestimating how much potential and what a big disruption agentic has has a potential to disrupt the grocery business. And at the same time, we're kind of overestimating how big a disruption it's already had to the grocery business. So I hear a lot of people throwing out stats from dubious sources about how prevalent AI shopping already is, and I hear people underestimating how big an impact AI shopping is likely to have on the consumer. So that's a kind of an in talking about agentic. I'll add another topic to the dialogue. I'll say another one that was really common on the stages was talking about the quote unquote changing consumer. And you know, this took a bunch of forms, but it took economic forms in terms of people picking different brands, picking different retail, either groceries, different delivery vehicles than they would take in the past. It also talked about things like GP1s that changed the consumption patterns for consumers. So there was a lot of discussion about kind of the old playbook not working as well as it once did because the consumer has so fundamentally changed in a lot of ways. So that was interesting.
And Jason, on cue, your internet feed started stuttering a bit after you mentioned being inebriated. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, my internet connection is also inebriated, for which I apologize.
Okay, so one of the big parts of the show is, you know, off stage, the meeting rooms, the show floor, the cocktail parties. Wanted to ask what you heard there that you might not have heard from the stage that you think is important. And Michele, we'll start with you here.
Okay. I would say the thing that was being discussed is that tension of, again, retail media, that's where I start, is the tension between how we're measuring, you know, Liquid Death talking about ROAS as stupid and dead. But I think the bigger message is what brands believe that they want from measurement, and the retailers saying, yeah, they're not going to get that because we don't agree that standardization is going to work for us. So I think there was definitely a healthy tension. I don't know how we're going to resolve that healthy tension, but it seemed to be throughout all the conversations that I was having. So that's what I saw.
Okay. Jason?
Oh, Peter, changing up the order on me. That's clever. Yeah, so kind of some of the interesting things I heard in the hallways and less on the stage was a whole discussion of the evolution of owned brands. So how important what historically we would have called private label is to retailers, but this new innovation in own brands is really beyond private label. It's brands that retailers are inventing that have unique value propositions and are distinctive from the national brands. And I heard from both a lot of brands that are feeling the heat from competition with retailers' own brands. And I'm hearing from a lot of retailers that are really leaning into their own brands and setting major goals around them. I also think there's a lot of discussion about macroeconomics, and in particular, uncertain demand coming into holidays, sort of lumpy demand. Peter mentioned, you know, it felt like an underattended year at Groceryshop, and I think a lot of that came down to folks that were being really careful about their travel budgets, folks that didn't want the optics of being at an industry conference, like in the middle of a potential economic downturn. So I wouldn't say people were necessarily all doom and gloom, but they felt very uncertain about what the second half of this year was likely to bring from a macroeconomic standpoint.
Okay. And Elena?
Michele, I would echo the measurement sentiment. We, especially in the AI search conversations, there's this general, I think, feeling that we've lost the holistic view of the journey. There's so much conversation around shoppers moving in that discovery to purchase across the different channels. We know, right, Jason, you've been saying social TikTok shopping, right? They're searching across so many channels, retail media, now AI assistants, sometimes even without touching the brand site. Yet off stage, a lot of conversation about how most measurement models that we're using, they're still built for clicks. They're still built for last click attribution, right? So we are relearning now how to measure influence when so much of the consumer journey is essentially invisible, right? So it was very interesting to discuss the emerging frameworks that we've been testing out, what others have tried, what has worked well, right? And how we can better connect visibility to conversion across these new emerging agentic pathways, and how just get a better picture for how AI drives influence, captures intent.
Okay, great. Next few questions, a little more specific. Your favorite quote or comment, and Jason, we'll let you go first this time.
Oh, thanks, Peter. One of the sessions on the last day is kind of a recap of all the major themes that the folks responsible for content at Groceryshop do, and they have the Omni Talk hosts, Ann and Chris on as well. And Ben Miller, who's one of the directors of content for Groceryshop, he had my favorite quote, which was, "It's about the store, stupid." And what he was referencing was all of these new initiatives and technologies that are coming to the brick and mortar store to make the stores more efficient, to make them work harder, to make them more omni-channel. And so that was a lot of the electronic shelf labels. It was a lot of the shelf scanning technologies that we already referenced, a lot of the computer vision technologies, wayfinding technologies, et cetera. So it's about the store, Peter.
Okay. Elena, your favorite quote?
Really liked what Marissa Perez said from PepsiCo. She's a SVP of Digital Commerce. In the session that she had on stage, she talked about measurement a lot. And specifically, at some point she paused, just got straight to the chase when speaking about AI, how it helps or doesn't help with data analysis, and just said crap in, crap out, right? You have to be careful with data privacy. You got to have the right data. You got to keep an eye on what goes in, have the right granularity of that data. And she also talked a lot about human touch being critical. There were multiple quotes related to that I wrote down, really emphasizing the importance of human touch. So Nitin Raleigh at Gallo, he also talked a lot about just the importance of being focused on human collaboration and AI being an amplifier. So if you have great collaboration, AI is gonna amplify that. If you have bad collaboration, it's gonna make it catastrophic. So really making sure that, especially when it comes to data measurement, governance, you're watching what goes in and having that human touch is essential.
Okay. And Michele?
I sat in a session about Poppy and Sweet Lorenz, which was really interesting because when you're starting a brand in this day and age, you really have to think differently. And the best quote I heard, and TikTok Shop is a big part of their strategy, was retailers want to be media networks, and media networks like TikTok Shop want to be retailers. So I think that's so interesting that those that started as media networks can become retailers, which is going to leave some of the retailers behind. So that was my favorite quote.
Okay. Most interesting or most significant data point? And Elena, if you can start.
That I heard referenced multiple times in a couple of different sessions that kept coming back is the recent Adobe stat, which is just crazy to me. It's on the explosive growth of referral traffic from Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, let's just say AI platforms, to retailer e-commerce sites like Walmart, Target, Best Buy. They're seeing a nearly 5,000% increase year over year. So every time someone asks ChatGPT best air fryer under $100, right, they click on a link that takes you to, let's say, a Walmart website. And then Walmart itself recently came out and said about 20% of their referrals are now coming directly from AI, which tells us this AI is becoming a real commerce channel, and consumers are relying on these channels to do the research, compare products, and in many different ways also complete the whole transaction. They send them straight to checkout on the retailer website. So just the rapid rise of that engagement is mind-boggling.
Okay. Michele, your favorite data point.
Okay, so one of our friends were on stage, Jack Sinclair from Sprouts. And although we've spent a lot of time with Sprouts and they're growing tremendously, the thing I thought was really interesting about their business is that 20% of their sales is fresh produce. However, what's even more interesting is that it's the same percentage of basket online as it is in store. So they've built up a trust in the consumer base that believes that when they're getting a delivery from Sprouts, they're getting good quality produce, something that nobody else is able to deliver on. So I thought that was really interesting. I've never heard that before.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah, I heard that too, and that definitely stuck out to me as well. Good call. So Peter kind of stole some of my thunder. The top line stat that was interesting was this: 1 out of every 8 Americans have tried GLP-1s. But there's kind of a couple of supplemental stats that went along with that, which is, and while they're trying GLP-1s, they're spending 10 to 20% less on calories than they did before. And so it kind of really codified to me that like every brand out there either has a headwind or a tailwind because of GLP-1s. You're either selling nutrient-dense foods, or you're selling medications that help remediate symptoms from GLP-1s, and then this massive explosion in GLP-1 growth is really helping you, or you're selling relatively calorie deficient foods, and consumers are spending 20% less on those foods. And we're right on the cusp of some more friendly GLP-1s, including, pills versus injections. And so that 1 out of 8 number is likely to go up quite a bit. They're also quite expensive and unaffordable for a lot of Americans at the moment. And that's likely to change in the near future. So as these become easier to take and more affordable, 1 out of 8 is likely to be a much higher percentage. And it has a major impact on how we all grocery shop. So that really stood out to me.
Okay. Now, Groceryshop, as well as Shop Talk, foundationally, new technologies driving retail. So wanted to ask what new technologies, new tools you might have seen that you thought were interesting. And Michele, if you can start.
Okay. I actually met with quite a few tech companies because obviously we want to be on the forefront of what's coming, and especially in store, because obviously we call that the new frontier, right? Which is silly because it's the original frontier. I did meet with a company. I'm not going to give them a plug, but I'm going to start with the one that I'm comparing it to, which is Caper Cart, which we've probably all seen. It's a very unique product. However, there are some issues with it because it's so large and it's so kind of cumbersome in the way that it's been created. And I met a company that's been operating in UK and Australia that actually just has the part that clicks onto a traditional cart. So you don't need a special cart, keeps the cost down. It seems to do everything or close to everything that the originator developed. But it doesn't require as much capital expenditure because you don't have to buy the carts. You only need to buy the console. So I thought that was really interesting. Looking forward to seeing how that goes because it does have impact on not only shopping, but retail media.
Jason?
Yeah, Michele, if that was a UK and Australian company, they were probably clicking it on a trolley, not a cart. But otherwise, that sounds super cool. I was also interested in a lot of the new in-store technologies. The Groceryshop had a dedicated section of the floor called Store to the Future. And so if you go in Store to the Future, there are a lot of new iterations of electronic shelf labels. They've gotten brighter and more vibrant. They've gone more colorful and more affordable. We're starting to see a lot of deployments of the electronic shelf labels. And they now have supplemental features like NFC chips in them so they can send data to your smartphone. And particularly interesting to me, they have lights. So you could do things like pick to light, like walk into a grocery store with your shopping list and have all the items you're looking for in the aisle you're standing in light up as you walk through that aisle, which is pretty cool. They're also a company, not a new company, but an important standards company in our industry called GS1, and they were previewing the new packaging standard, which is a 2D barcode. So think of it like a QR code instead of a 1D barcode on all the consumer packaging. And that's going to be a very big change for how we can communicate with folks on the shelf and how we can send product information to folks' digital devices when they're shopping in physical stores. So I'm super interested in that. And then I will give a plug. We talked a lot about agentic companies, and there are a lot of kind of companies using AI to optimize existing grocery processes. But this whole idea of buying things from the robot, from the agents, my podcast co-host Scott Wingo unknowingly started a new successful startup called Refi Buy, and they were in the Shark Tank competition, and what they're doing is helping brands and grocers send their entire product catalogs to the answer engines to enable them for commerce and to add the hundreds of extra attributes that the robot wants to know that humans traditionally didn't ask about. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Okay. And Elena.
Lots of great, interesting tech. What I found really fascinating, there were a couple of announcements one from Instacart, Algolia was there, some other companies that focused a lot on AI-powered site search experience, on-site experience. So if I'm shopping, I'm going to a website, the whole e-commerce experience feels a lot more intuitive. It's not just keyword search, it's more like you start typing something, it's more personalized, it's intent driven. They pull in all kinds of related content. They pull in blog posts, FAQs, help desk pages, almost like a chatbot type of an experience, but it helps you find what you actually need, not just what you're typing. It's just a more intuitive, conversational experience with the brand product content on the site. So I thought that was really interesting.
Okay. Now we are coming up on the hour, and I think I'm going to have to apologize and say we're not going to be able to get to your questions out there, folks. And so want to wrap things up a little bit and sort of smush these last few questions that I had for you folks. What's the topic that was missing that's really important to commerce that wasn't discussed enough, or at least wasn't emphasized enough over the course of the 4 days at Groceryshop? And Elena, if you can start there.
So from my perspective, right, if I were to choose just one thing that didn't get enough airtime at Groceryshop, it was probably the larger shift that we're seeing now from visibility to selection being chosen. Every conversation on stage, I felt like, was very much about how do we show up for the consumer at the right moment, right? How do we grow visibility? But if a lot of the conversations now are focused on how we make sure that our products are actually chosen by AI, right? If they're making those micro decisions on behalf of consumers, your Chrome is comparing prices, reviews, all the brand trust signals to make a recommendation, we really do need to go and start talking about beyond optimizing for that discoverability and start thinking more about AI, almost like AI choice architecture, right? Strategies that influence how these new AI models then look at us, evaluate quality, authority, brand preference. So not just being seen, but being chosen, being selected by not only the consumer, but the AI models as well.
Okay. And Jason?
Yeah, so I was kind of disappointed in the lack of discussions about metrics and success criteria evolution. There was a little bit of that, particularly in some of the retail media things, but from my perspective, not near enough. Like, we're still talking about bad advertising metrics that need to die, and we're talking about channel-specific metrics and last-touch attribution metrics, and there really wasn't enough discussion about kind of moving towards more endemic customer lifetime value metrics, large scale experimentation, multi-touch attribution, sort of all these things that would turn marketing from more of a art into a science.
Okay. And just to wrap up, I know we said at the top that it's impossible to forecast these days, but just wanted to ask you to go 1 year out. Groceryshop's agenda next year. What would you expect to see as a key theme there? And Jason, if you could start.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of mention of AI and agentic this year, but the majority of it was in the context of taking something that retailers are already doing and being better at. Being better at making images, product detail pages, being better at providing customer service. I think next year there's going to be even more talk about agentic, but it's going to be more about new customer experiences that are enabled by agentic, that are things that we didn't used to do. And if I were to go a little further out on my prediction limb, I think one in particular that's going to become really important is this whole notion of replenishment. And you know, you think about the 62 items in the average consumer's cart, and there's a significant portion of those that are basic replenishment of something that consumers already decided to use in her life. And I think how she chooses and get those products has the potential to be dramatically different next year than what we're all talking about this year as a result of agentic commerce.
Okay. And Elena, what do you expect to see?
Jason, I agree, but I think also in addition to that, all that plus what happens if consumers are not the ones doing the actual shopping. So I think we'll still see a lot of discussions related to AI commerce, agentic shopping in general, with the emphasis on what it means to loyalty and product visibility and conversion. We'll be talking about all those strategies in the age of AI.
Okay, great. That does it on time. First, I want to thank the panel, Elena MacGurn, Michele Roney, Jason Goldberg, for all of the great information, all of the great insights that you brought back from the show for us here today. I'd also like to thank everybody in the audience for giving us the last hour. We know your time is very valuable. We hope you're walking away with a few things that are make you thinking and might make your jobs a little bit easier in the future. We've got the session recorded, so you can come back and listen to it again or share it with your colleagues or your clients or whoever you think might benefit from it. And we'll send you information on that very soon. I also mentioned already we're going to be publishing our full recap from the report next week, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that as well. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about Publicis Commerce and the very many ways we can help your organization activate some of the strategies and activities that we were talking about here today, please scan the QR code that you see here now, and we will have someone reach out to you. Otherwise, thanks again to everybody here, and we hope to see you back again in the future at one of our other webinars. Take care.